talk to us about Marcelo Claure declining to attend, along with Simon Seegers, which is a company that SoftBank bought, in the context of the new information we're getting about a body double being sent in and more signs of alleged premeditated murder.
These leaks that are coming out, I mean, the issue is that there has been this sort of drip of leaks being provided by the Turks to various media outlets. And I think every time the Saudis come up with an explanation or a version of events, the Turks seem to be leaking yet more information to raise doubt about that, adding to pressure on Saudi Arabia. And I think that's basically making it very hard for senior officials of companies, senior executives, to agree to be at this conference, because they feel that right now it may taint them or may raise questions against them about their relationship with the leadership in Saudi Arabia. So you're seeing people really at the last moment, I mean, the conference is about to start, dropping out.
And Selina, we still don't know yet if Masayoshi Son himself will be attending this conference, correct? But the COO not going is a telling sign.
It's certainly interesting because Masa Son has not made a public statement about whether or not he's attending. He's actually also on the advisory board, and this is starting any minute now, and he's probably imminently preparing whether or not to attend. And I have heard from sources that some of the portfolio companies still slated to speak are still on the tip of their chairs deciding whether or not they should go. It is interesting that Marcelo has decided to take his name off of the list. We're seeing a sort of potentially an internal split about what they should do about this. But again, Masa Son is in a super precarious position right now because he has a very close and personal relationship to the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince has personally committed, $45 billion to the current Vision Fund, another $45 billion to the next one. And he certainly probably wants to maintain that relationship and wants to continue to wait to see what the official statement is from the Saudi government, even though it's looking increasingly bleak and horrifying.
Riad, you've seen an entire evolution here. I mean, the point has been made that the discussion about the ethics of doing business with the Saudis should have happened a long time ago, and yet now we're seeing so many different companies, so many different people tied up in business relationships with the Saudi government. Do you believe that these relationships are at risk of completely unraveling at this point, or can they be saved?
I think it's hard to see them completely unraveling because the investments, the linkages, as you said, are really so significant. I mean, if you think of SoftBank, just SoftBank alone, we're talking about $90 billion, $45 billion already committed, another $45 billion promised, plus the agreement, for example, for this 200 gigawatt solar park, which was signed personally by the Prince and Masayoshi Son. It's kind of hard to see that suddenly disappearing. You look at the $20 billion infrastructure fund that the Saudis have invested in the US. You're looking at all the big Wall Street players having great commitment, having placed a lot of, are really invested in Saudi Arabia and are trying to do work with Saudi Arabia. So seeing that unravel completely is hard to imagine. However, I think what you will see is that the willingness of fresh money to come in, the risk premium, at least the risk premium asked of the Saudis may rise.
Well, and I wonder, Selina, what happens to that, because it's been said that it'll be really difficult for SoftBank to find an investor who's willing to commit as much money as the Saudis have committed to not just this Vision Fund, but successive Vision Funds. And I wonder if, companies like Apple and Qualcomm have also invested in the Vision Fund. And if they don't reject that money, does that compromise the investors who've already come on board?
It's going to be certainly difficult for SoftBank to replace that $45 billion in this fund and another $45 billion in the next fund. And we actually had a recent interview with the Crown Prince by Bloomberg News, and there was a very interesting statement that he made. He said, "We are the creators of the SoftBank Vision Fund. Without the PIF, there will be no SoftBank Vision Fund." So clearly, they're incredibly important to the ability of this fund to exist. Furthermore, Masa Son may have his reputation tainted in Silicon Valley if he continues to take money from the Saudi Arabian government. Silicon Valley has this ethos of doing good, though there has been, quote, quote, dirty money that has come into Silicon Valley in the past with such a public, horrifying incident. It may be hard for some of these entrepreneurs to swallow the fact that this is where the limited partners for this fund is ultimately coming from.
Now, Riad, what is your take on the comments we heard from Jared Kushner? I mean, this is the first time he's done an interview since President Trump took office, and at this particular time, given what we've also heard from the president himself, which is sort of a set of mixed signals.
I think it just shows the difficult position that the Trump administration finds itself here. I mean, you see these contradictory statements from the president, and Jared Kushner is basically taking the Saudi Arabian line on this, which is, let's wait and see what investigation shows. So then they're deciding not to rush to judgment on here. At the same time, he's telling the Saudis, please take this seriously. My sense from being here today, I think the Saudis are taking this quite seriously, and you can see that by the fact that they removed senior officials from their positions, basically getting them to take the blame for all of this. I think that the key here is the role that the Crown Prince played or didn't play in all of this. The Saudis are insisting that he didn't know what was happening. He wasn't told what had happened. And I think the Trump administration would like that to be the case. But they're asking the Saudis to really come clean, as it were, with all the information they have about this.
Riad, though, isn't that going to become a little bit more difficult to defend given the leaks coming from the Turkish government? I mean, it seems like every time the Saudis make some statement, new information, new evidence comes to light, undermining what they have said.
Indeed. I think one has to, though, just to say that a lot of the things coming from the Turkish side are indeed that leaks. They're not from they're not official statements by Turkish police. Now, we may hear more that is official from Erdogan tomorrow, which is also the starting day of the conference. So we may know formally what the Turks actually have. We may not, we don't know. Because the Turks, what they are releasing the information. Sometimes they've released pictures. They say they have tapes. We're not sure whether they have tapes, whether it's video or just audio. So there is a little bit of uncertainty of exactly what it is that officially they have. And I think that's causing that bit of unease in people sort of deciding what to do, what not to do. It seems right now that most executives, the top executives, have decided it's just not worth the risk, the reputational damage. But let's also say, I mean, the conference will have a lot of sort of mid-level managers coming from these banks. So I think there's clearly a sense that they don't want to cut off ties completely.
And one last quick question. What is the reaction among the Saudi population on the ground there, given, obviously these huge diplomatic relationships at stake, but a huge investment conference that's supposed to be about the future of this country, being seriously compromised?
I think that, first of all, it's hard to generalize. Of course, there are no opinion polls or freedom of expression, but just from the people that our reporters have talked to, there is a sense of shock. There was shock when the government finally came out and admitted that Khashoggi had killed the foreign minister, then we even further and called it murder. I think, again, the officials I've talked to here say, yes, something went wrong, something terrible happened. I think the admission of that after really 10 days of denying that Khashoggi had killed and saying that he had left, which the Crown Prince told us in the interview with us, he said that, according to his information, he left the consulate soon after entering it. I think there is a sense of shock at this, and great discomfort at this. People kind of feel what this doesn't represent our country. This isn't something that should have happened in their name, as it were. But at the same time, there's also a sense of that the country is very much under attack.